Well, as we kick off 11/11, it's an absolute pleasure and delight to be able to welcome David Lloyd, who's the country manager for the UK and the Nordics. David, thank you very much indeed for joining.
Thanks for having me, David. It's great to be here.
Where to start, really? Maybe if you could give us a little sort of insight as to what the role of the country manager for Alibaba is.
Sure. It's a busy role. It's an exciting role. I think you said I manage the UK and the Nordics. I also look after the Netherlands and Ireland.
I'm sorry to leave them out.
No, you should apologise to them, not me.
That's all right. I'm apologising to them.
But what that means in practice, right, is I look after all of the rainy bits of Europe and all the cold bits. But when I think about the role, looking across the entire Alibaba group, what I really have to do is two things. One is to work out what can Alibaba do in that region, and also what can the value of the region be to Alibaba and what we do. And that can mean any number of things. So we talk about making it easy to do business anywhere. How can the Alibaba group help businesses from this region do business anywhere? And there's a few things we do in that. One of those, for example, is we focus a lot on Alibaba Cloud. So the cloud team and I will work with businesses from Northern Europe and help them think about how they can build their presence in China and in Asia, where our cloud business is really strong. What work we can do for them here, how we can help them with marketing opportunities. And that's a really, really important part of the role. But if I think where I focus the most, where I really spend a lot of time, is helping businesses from this region to export. Now, primarily, that means exporting to China, because China is nearly half of the world's e-commerce and we're a very popular business in China. So, if I have that conversation with a brand from Northern Europe, I can really connect them to a huge proportion of the world's consumers. But it could also mean Southeast Asia. It could mean AliExpress in Europe. But that's the really, really big focus, is finding businesses from the region, large and small, thousands of them, and helping them think about how they can export and how we can make it easy for them to do business anywhere.
Now, clearly Alibaba is a business that's growing fast across the world. How challenging is it to be able to grow the business across all those regions?
The challenge is probably one of opportunity. When you do have so many opportunities in front of you, you have to pick the right ones. And this is why I said, I have to think, well, what are the bits of Alibaba that we can bring to this region? What are the bits of Alibaba that are going to drive the most value here? And when you start to think about that, you start to say, well, where is there opportunity for brands from Northern Europe? And I always think number one is China, right? Because it is, for many brands, an unexploited opportunity. It's doubtless the world's biggest e-commerce market. We have a lot to say in China, right? We have a very, very popular position. So there's a really clear link up I can make there. Beyond that, you then have to think brand by brand. What do they need? So some businesses we can really help technically with Alibaba Cloud. Others, tourism, for example, can be really important. So if we look at somebody like the British Museum, we say, well, actually, Fliggy, our tourism business, can be really powerful. Pre-pandemic, and I hope post-pandemic, in terms of driving people from China to visit the British Museum. But during the pandemic, we've worked with them and many other attractions like them to do virtual tours. So there's always things we can do. So the challenge is one of, there are so many opportunities. How do we pick the right one? But I'm pretty confident that we have that order of prioritization just about right.
Now, you've been with Alibaba now, for 5 years. In fact, yes. I think you get a special something on your lanyard for 5 years.
I get it's exciting for me. I get a red lanyard. We change the lanyard color after every few years, and we have gifts that we give. So I think somewhere there's a ring in the post, which binds me to the company right after 5 years. So there's a ring somewhere.
Well, I think it's very well deserved. How would you characterise both Alibaba and I suppose particularly 11/11 5 years ago to today?
So five years to today it's so much change has happened in 5 years. So I remember I joined in October 2016. And so 11/11 was just around the corner. A couple of weeks in, I was in Shenzhen at the gala celebration, the build-up, like the televised build-up to 11/11.
It's fun, isn't it?
It's a lot of fun. Being there was mind-blowing, right? 2 or 3 weeks into my career here, because looking on the stage, you have world-class athletes, superstars, megastars from China around the world, brands from all over the world, this huge build-up. And I thought, this is the biggest thing I've ever been involved in, right? 100,000 brands took part that year. First year, which was 2009, there were about 27 brands. 2016, 100,000 brands. I'm trying to think how many consumers. It was probably around 450 million consumers. Because I remember when I joined thinking 450 million people on the platforms in China is a lot. And so that felt, kind of unbeatable, right? And just like the biggest opportunity imaginable. You fast forward to now, and in terms of sheer scale, that's obviously the biggest thing that's changed. This year we'll have 290,000 brands taking part. There will be over 900 million consumers taking part. So we've pretty much trebled the number of brands, doubled the number of consumers. So what felt big now feels kind of much smaller. So that's the really obvious change. But what I would also say is if I take myself back to that kind of slightly green new Ali Ren who joined in 2016, everything felt like it was about the promotion. Right, this felt like a very, very big sales day, focused on the numbers. A lot of people in how they talked about Double 11 focused on the discounts. If I look at today, I think Double 11 is a microcosm, a really distilled moment of everything that Alibaba is about. So we think a lot about sustainability this year. We think a lot about inclusion. We think about vibrancy. How can we get as many brands as possible involved, as many people from all walks of life involved? How many different countries can we get involved? And that, to me, feels very, very different, right? Because we're less focused on this promotional moment and much more focused on how do we bring all of the best of Alibaba to this 11-day period? How do we make it more sustainable? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we make it really vibrant? And we think a lot more about innovation as well. How do we really innovate every year? Not just to make it a great sales event and a promotional event, but something really exciting and new and involving.
I think to me that's one of the extraordinary things in terms of that transition, because I think when most people think of a sales promotion period, they think of it in terms of high discounts on products that people probably don't really want. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to discount to that extent. But the degree to which 11.11 is now the launch pad for new products, new creations, new innovations across all sorts of categories, from countdown chocolate bars right the way through to designer fashion brands. It's extraordinary. What is it, do you think, that has driven 11.11 to be the innovation sort of centric time of the year?
It's a great question. I think, what's driven that? I think partly is the inclusion of so many brands. That, like I mentioned, 27 at launch to 290,000 this year. When you have that many brands very, very focused on a big moment that's expanded from 1 day to 11 days, they can really focus in on delivering. We have to focus on delivering the best of Alibaba. The brands have to think, well, how do we deliver the best of ourselves to Chinese consumers and to consumers around the world? That means, they can focus on new product launches, on developing products with feedback from Chinese consumers and launching it in front of them in that moment, capturing the excitement that 900 million people have about that moment. It means you don't just think about promotion, you think about innovation. I think what happened as well is that consumers become really demanding, right? If you, as you mentioned, if you just have a moment that's about discounting, then it's just a moment where maybe you log on and shop a bit. But if it's a moment that's also kind of laced with entertainment, where you're expecting brands to surprise you, where 290,000 brands, by the way, are all jostling for your attention and saying, well, how do I stand out? It's not going to be because I give you 30% and they give you 20%. It's going to be because I give you something new, something you've asked for, because you've given me feedback through the year and I've learned what you're looking for and I'm going to redesign a product around you. I think that is why Double 11 inspires such creativity, because it is a moment where 900 million pairs of eyes are focused and looking for more than just deals, they're looking for excitement and engagement.
And is it a good time to tell a brand story?
for sure, absolutely. I think because in that moment, well, we're telling a story as Alibaba, as Tmall, as Taobao, as Lazada, as AliExpress. We're telling stories in that moment. You have a lot of focus from consumers. When you have an 11-day period where people are online a lot, then you have a great opportunity to tell a story. And, you know, think about this. Our average customer in an average moment is coming to us 9 times a day anyway, spending nearly half an hour a day every day with us. When you're during the Double 11 period, that just ramps up, right? People are fully engaged online. They're engaged offline as well, by the way, because Double 11 takes place in Fresh Hippo. It takes place in time in China. So there are offline parts to this. There are other parts of the ecosystem that aren't just e-commerce taking part. So you're constantly kind of surrounded by this period. And so for a brand, yeah, it's a great time to tell a story, but it's particularly in China a great time to tell a Chinese story to those consumers.
We'll come back to that a little bit later on. You mentioned a little bit about sustainability. Obviously, this week, the United Nations conference taking place here in the United Kingdom. What are you doing specifically this year for 11/11 that you may not have done in previous years in order to ensure that the context of the festival is also a sustainable one?
Yeah, it's very important that we do that, right? Because it was a couple of years ago we broke through a billion packages delivered. And with that becomes quite a lot of responsibility, I would say, for sustainability. And there are a few elements to it. So the first, and I think the most obvious one is, you know, what do you do with packaging? Right? If you're delivering so many packages, how do you try and make sure those packages themselves are sustainable? That they are the right size, that we help people to recycle. And Taiyao, the logistics network within Alibaba Group, has done a lot of work here. So part of that is using just really smart technology to get just the right size of package for the product.
So none of these massive sort of tubes for a product that's that big.
Yeah, right. You know, we've all had
We've
that.
all had that, yeah.
Where you get a box delivered, and then when you open it up, there's a load of bubble wrap, and inside there's a chocolate bar or something. With this, because we have a very good view on the size of the different products we're sending, we can then very, very quickly use different sizes of packaging, get exactly the right size of packaging for the product, and really reduce waste that way. Second thing, plastic-free packaging. Packaging that is 99% recyclable or compostable, right? So that there's really no excuse for waste. None of this packaging really needs to go into landfill. But then what you also have to do is help consumers recycle it. So there are tens of thousands of recycling points that Taiyao sets up around China. There's even partnerships we do with brands like Nestle, like Unilever, and hundreds of others besides, where we will work to collect packaging from consumers. So if they leave their packaging outside their front door after they've used it, we can collect it as Taiyao. We will incentivize consumers with relatively small sums, like 3 RMB, which is perhaps 30p or so, 40p. Vouchers to say, if you reuse that box, if you recycle that box, you can get money off your next shop. So there's a lot that Sanyao's doing around packaging. There are other parts as well, right? So obviously there's a lot of computing power, a lot of processing power. At our peak in Double 11, we're processing over 500,000 orders a second. Right,
that's a staggering number.
Right, so you know, it's almost unimaginable, right? But the processing power behind that is very significant. If you look at what we're doing with our data centers that power that, they're becoming greener. So if you just take one of our data centers in northwest China, it will, I think, operate saving about 26,000 tons of carbon emissions less this year than last year, because we're using more renewable energy, we're using better cooling. So those data centers are becoming more efficient. But then the third part is speaking to consumers directly and saying, how do we help you to make green decisions? And some of that is about packaging, but some of it's about product as well. So we can present products to consumers and say, well, you know, let's say you're buying an electric grid toaster. How do we help you buy a greener toaster than the one you might have bought previously? If you make that decision, we can incentivize you again with vouchers, or through a partner business like Alipay, you can get Alipay points. If we give you Alipay points, when you build those up, once you reach a certain level, we'll plant a tree in a dry part of China, usually in the kind of far west of China, in an arid area. Now we've already planted, or Alipay's already planted, over 200 million of those trees. So, we can make it fun for you as a consumer, make it validating, but also valuable for you as a consumer to make green decisions. And when you do that, we're going to reward you, and we're also hopefully going to protect the environment. So there's a lot we can do across packaging, across technology, but also in terms of really nudging consumers and making it fun for consumers to make green decisions.
Now one of the trends we've seen in retail overall, and I think also particularly in China, is the whole sort of concept of inclusive retail. What does inclusive retail mean to you from an Alibaba perspective?
So obviously it means a lot, inclusive retail, but I would focus on two things. How do we make retail and how do we make Double 11 as inclusive as possible for consumers? And two, how do you make it as inclusive as possible for brands and get as many businesses involved as possible? Remembering that we want to make it easy to do business anywhere, and we're very, very focused on SMEs. So thinking about consumers, the first and easiest thing to say is to come back to that 5-year change, right? 450 million new consumers shopping, taking part in Double 11 this year versus my first year, which I don't take credit for.
I think you should.
Okay, I'll take it. 450 million new consumers. We know, right, that higher earning, that wealthier people are more likely to have come online sooner. So the reality is that nearly all of those people who come online are likely to be probably less wealthy than their predecessors. So what you've got is some of the...
Or maybe older.
Or maybe older, right? It's a great point, right? So there's a number of reasons you might be less likely to be online, but probably you're less kind of involved in the formal and the digital economy. So what can we do? We can say, well, how do we bring a greater range of products to those people who maybe have a bit less spending power? How do we take more products from rural China, for example, to people in rural China, so that you can buy groceries much cheaper than otherwise you might be able to? You can have access to a wider range of goods as a consumer in rural China than you otherwise would have been able to without digital platforms. We've redesigned Taobao. So Taobao, the principal app through which people shop in China, we've created a special version of Taobao for elderly consumers. It has bigger fonts. It has easier navigation, kind of simple stuff, right? But if you're a digital native, if you're a younger consumer, right? I'm just what they call a geriatric millennial, right? So I'm an old millennial. For me, I'm not exactly digital native, but I'm comfortable. If you're my parents, you're less comfortable, I would say, online. I'll give you the example. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he calls this is very good for the BBC, he calls everything that is digital streaming the iPlayer. So he'll say, I was watching the rugby on the iPlayer, or I was doing this on the iPlayer. And I don't mean to criticise my dad, he's probably watching. But if you are an older digital consumer, sometimes you need a bit of help, and it could just be bigger fonts, easier navigation, and just easier ways to use the app. So we've done that with Taobao to make that more inclusive. But then what I also think about is, how do we take this outside just of China? So how do we take it to developing markets in Southeast Asia? How do we bring some of the great stuff of Double 11 to AliExpress, which is really popular in Russia and in parts of Europe, like Spain and like France, and like Brazil as well, which is not in Europe, but it's still popular there. So that is what I think about as inclusivity for consumers and bringing them a wide range of products. And then there's crossover for brands. If you have 290,000 brands taking part, you're necessarily talking about a lot of SMEs, right? There's not that many mega brands in the world, right? And most of the biggest brands in the world are taking part in Double 11. But what you can see when I say 290,000 is that there are tiny companies taking part, right? There are businesses with fewer than 10 employees. There are sole traders taking part. And we're giving them access to 900 million consumers around the world.
I mean, I think that's unbelievably important, because you can be forgiven to think that actually 1111 is just for the big guys. We see all these big numbers. You think, well, maybe I need to be a mega international brand with huge amounts of resources and international departments and logistic sort of flows and massive, great big cash flows to be able to participate in something as big as 1111. But as you say, the enablement of small, medium-sized companies to, in a sense, plug into your infrastructure to enable them to do that is something that's quite significant.
Yeah, it's really why we exist, right? Using, and I think you've put it really well, plugging into digital infrastructure. The company was founded to help small businesses benefit from digital and trade globally. So our founders talked about how globalization had been for very big businesses, and we needed to find a way to help smaller businesses to trade globally. And the best way you can do that is creating digital platforms, right? If you can create marketplaces, you create a massive leveling of the playing field, because the consumers come there, I mentioned, 9 times a day on average, nearly an hour a day on average. So we've created this ecosystem, we've created this platform where people come. What you can then do is make it as easy as possible for brands of any size to join the ecosystem. Of course, it's easier for bigger companies with large resources to do this kind of thing. But when you've got a business like Alibaba, which has created a very, very popular shopping platform, great marketing tools, makes logistics easy via lanyard, makes payments easy via Alipay and other methods as well, has cloud infrastructure sitting behind all of that, and so many other things besides, right? Then you can say it's easy to do business anywhere. And then for a small business, it's a bit demystified. And we did research last year with SMEs from the UK, and we asked them, are you planning to export? And if so, are you planning to export for China? And if not, why not? And what we found, fewer than, I think it was a quarter of them were planning to export. Of the people who were planning to export, only 7% were prioritizing China because they thought it was too far away, thought they were too small, they thought language was too hard. And I think that is, first of all, I think it's a real shame. And second, I think it's a real opportunity.
Well, I mean, you look at the growth in China and Asia, for that matter, over the next 5 years. It's going to be greater than the growth probably everywhere else. So.
But put it really simply, David, right? Like, it's nearly half of the world's e-commerce. So when you're taking that decision as a business, you're saying to myself, yeah, that half of the world is not for me. I'm going to go for the other half, which is 200 plus countries. And of course, there's larger countries and smaller countries within that. But you can go for nearly half of the world's e-commerce. And when I then think about the businesses we've enabled to be successful there are such motivating stories, I think. So if I can give you a couple of examples.
Please do, yeah.
Smooth Skin, who people who know me know I talk about a lot because I just think they are a phenomenal business. We met them 2017, fewer than 50 employees. Today, over 300 employees. China's their biggest market. They did a live stream last year, which will be smaller than this year, which reached over 100 million people in China. Their high-tech, high-end laser hair removal products are the category leader in China. So being brave, taking that leap and plugging into the ecosystem has transformed their business. Right? Hawkins and Brimble, really good.
Yes, we've just spoken to Stephen actually.
Okay, so he's probably told you better than I can, but but great products. Staff, I don't know where they are today, but when we met them, fewer than 10 people. Last year they had to charter 2 planes. So he probably told you that, chartered 2 planes to meet demand in China on 11/11. And this year, we launched something called Pitch Fest, which we worked with WPP on as well, and we were really proud to do it and glad to have your help, where we said we want to find British and Irish SMEs who haven't really thought about China yet and help them enter China, show them, no, it's not really easy, but it's much easier than you think. And we invited those SMEs to apply. We said, show us your products, right? Tell us what you think could sell well in China. We committed to giving feedback to all of them. We found 11 of them who we thought were ready for China, and all of them are launching. And I'll give you one example of those SMEs on Pitch Fest. Lodo.
Dear to our heart.
So we were talking earlier.
WPP nominated brand. It was tremendous.
Came through you. We met them together. I think you'd met them before. They made these fantastic low-carb pizza bases, which genuinely I now buy because I was thinking about my lockdown diet and I was thinking about my love of pizza. So I'm now eating low-dough pizzas. These guys, pretty small business from Rochdale, make fantastic products. They're going to launch on Double 11 this year. And I think they're going to be a big success in China. You can make their pizza bases, you can use them as a wrap. I think Chinese consumers are going to start making them into Chinese-style wraps, and I think it's going to be really successful.
Well, don't go away after this interview with David, because we have a piece on Lodo, and we have created actually with Lodo, with Rude Health and with Vitabiotics. Spookily enough, 11 recipes that have their products in them for 11/11. So we'll be showing one recipe per day. So
with Vitabiotics as well.
And Vitabiotics, yes. We've done a cocktail with Vitabiotics, but more of that a little bit later. I mean, you talked a little bit about the I suppose what I would call the ecosystem. People are probably very familiar with Alibaba, not so familiar with some of the ecosystem Alibaba companies that help navigate, as you say, the Alipay and logistics operations. Explain a little bit about that ecosystem, and actually how do brands have the ability to be able to work within it?
So you mentioned Vitabiotics, for example, right? That is a business which I think is about 50 years old in the UK. Has great British heritage. Number one healthcare brand in categories like, for example, pregnancy care, but many other categories I think as well. They've taken off in a really big way in China last year on Double 11. From a strong base, they grew over 20% year over year. We started talking to them about other parts of the ecosystem. So they're now working with Lazada, leading e-commerce platform in Southeast Asia. So Vitabiotics, having started and done a really good job with us in China, and now expanding across Southeast Asia with us. They're also starting to do some work with our Alibaba Cloud business as well. So, there's a lot we can do. And I think, I won't talk for Vitabiotics about the work they're doing with cloud, but I think that's going to be really, really cutting edge. And it's going to change potentially how they're able to connect to consumers in China in a way that's going to be really innovative. There are other parts of the business as well. So if I think about Fliggy, right? Fliggy also does a bunch of promotional activity.
Well, again, Fliggy is probably a brand that very few people have heard of. So explain what it is.
So Fliggy, so called because it is a flying piggy is the logo. It is our travel and tourism business. Incredibly busy and popular pre-pandemic when there was, of course, so much Chinese tourism. Well over 200 million users on the platform in China. It helped you to book flights, hotels, experience different tourist attractions. What we've done with Fliggy during the pandemic has been to connect Chinese consumers to the places they can no longer travel to, and which they will hopefully travel to again in future. So they've done tours of the places like the British Museum, but also the V&A in London. They've done tours of the Louvre, and I think Galerie Lafayette in Paris. So with Fliggy, we can also create Double 11 experiences. And then here in Europe, AliExpress, which is increasingly popular here in the UK, very popular in the Netherlands, and incredibly popular in places like France and Spain. AliExpress is going to be having a really big role to play.
Explain a little bit about AliExpress and what they do.
So AliExpress, and thank you for the opportunity, is a marketplace business. So we are always, or almost always, marketplace business. AliExpress creates a marketplace for sellers here in Europe, but also in the US, in Russia, and in Brazil. The majority of those sellers today come from China. So it enables, say, a British consumer to browse a vast array of goods, most of which come from China, but some also from other parts of the world. Great prices, some branded goods, some non-branded goods, across a variety of categories. It enables you to shop probably at really, really great prices, I would say as well, compared to a lot of things you can purchase here from European marketplaces. But what we're doing in places like Spain, where we're building a team to service local consumers as well, is starting to work with local sellers in Spain. So what you can see with something like AliExpress is it starts as I would say, China to rest of world platform. But what it develops into is a anywhere in the world to local market platform, but always acting as a marketplace.
Now, you talked a little bit about inclusivity in a sense. Inclusivity is also, in its broadest sort of sense, a way of being able to economically help smaller to medium businesses around the world. How important do you think the platform that you have can be for economic growth around the world, and particular, as as the UK, exits or has exited Europe, the impacts are sort of beginning to be felt post pandemic in positive ways, negative ways, irrespective of your particular views on that. But we, Great Britain, UK PLC, will need to be exporting more than they've ever done in the past.
Yeah, so look, I think it's critical. I think marketplaces and digital have a critical role to play in digital inclusivity. Why? The main reason is thinking about how we shop. We tend to gravitate online and offline to places we know. So we tend to go to kind of big brands, I would say. What marketplaces do is they create a really popular environment, if you get it right, which I think we have done in China and we do around the world as well. And they create this place that people come, as I mentioned, 9 times a day, nearly half an hour a day. But anyone can open a store on that marketplace. It is like a giant shopping mall where we rent the space to a limitless number of brands. And today, that number is 290,000. What that means is you as a business don't have to think so hard about, well, what infrastructure do I have to create to be able to compete globally? What I can do as a smaller brand is I can plug in, as you mentioned, someone else's infrastructure that I know connects to over 900 million consumers, that I know delivers over $1 trillion every year in GMV and sales, right? Sales for those brands. And therefore, as that SME, I can feel pretty reassured that I'm connecting to a large audience, that the technology is best in class, is world leading, and that I don't have to make all of those investments myself. Now, then you think about who are those businesses? Well, we've done that for, as I mentioned, 290,000 brands, a huge number of them international. There's over 1,500 UK brands on our marketplaces in China selling today. Last year's Double 11, those brands made nearly $500 million. Nearly $500 million just in that 11/11 period. So, those brands are having transformational experiences. If you then think about some of the businesses I talked about already, Smooth Skin going from about 50 employees to over 300, China becoming the number one market. We know that when a business exports, that its employees are basically producing more for the UK economy. We know that those employees tend to get paid better. I think their pay is on average 7% better if you're in an exporting business versus a non-exporting business in a similar sector. And the export opportunity created by digital platforms is always additive, because you're not saying, well, how do I do a bit of replacement activity? When you enter a brand new market, you're speaking to a new set of consumers. So if you're a business that hasn't entered China, and you enter China with Alibaba and start speaking to hundreds of millions of consumers for the first time, it's brand new value for your business.
So I suppose the critical question within that context is then, what categories are doing well in China at the moment? Where do you focus your attention if you're a brand that has potentially is in multi-categories, or where are the sweet spots at the moment? What's going on?
Yeah, first of all, the news is great, because when you have so many people shopping on the platform, all the categories are flying, right? So there is no category that is not worth bothering with. Like I mentioned, there's over $1 trillion a year of GMV coming through these platforms. So all of the categories are good. Where I think there's real opportunity for brands from this region, first of all, and I'll come on to categories, I promise. People,
I won't forget, don't worry.
People love British brands. They really do. So I mentioned Vitabiotics, the fact that they've been given Queen's Awards for innovation, the fact that they have a great deal of heritage here in the UK, that really helps. Also, by the way, huge brands like Burberry and Dyson have such tremendous British heritage and reputation for their design and quality. That plays really, really well. And it plays across the board, right? So also a business like Whittard of Chelsea, who we've worked really closely with over the last few years. Stores on Tmall Global and Tmall.com. They're doing really innovative partnerships in China, by the way, with different kinds of brands to raise awareness of different kinds of tea drinking. Their hot chocolate's really successful. So British plays well. By the way, So does Nordic, right? The idea of Nordic health, the idea of Dutch quality as well. So a brand like Rituals from the Netherlands, also incredibly popular and does really, really well because people trust brands from this part of the world. If I then think about the categories that you're not going to forget, food and drink, really, really important, I would say. And there are brands from this region who have been really successful, like Wittard, but like T-Pigs as well. Lodo, I think, are going to do really, really well, and many, many more besides. Nutrition. I mentioned Vitabiotics, but anything that's about healthy living, right? Anything Rituals plays really well on kind of healthy skincare, protein brands, supplements, the kind of brands that tell you we're going to be helping you to live a healthier lifestyle. Those businesses do really, really well as well. And then always I have a kind of personal favourite for fashion, because I think fashion brands from this part of the world are really highly prized and sought after and tend to do really, really well. But if you're helping people live a healthier lifestyle, either through what they eat or how they supplement or what they put onto their skin, you'll do really well.
Now, you talked a little bit about the sort of product innovations that many of the brands are developing. What innovations has Alibaba done for this year's 11/11?
So I would probably look at two things. One of which we've had before, but which is just exploding, and that is live streaming. So far, in the pre-sale period to Double 11, so Double 11 starts with us today, right? But the pre-sale has already been going for over a week. Over that period, over 175 different live streamers have delivered over 10 million RMB in sales. That's over £1 million each. It's about £1.2 million each. 175 of them, £1.2 million each. So there's a real diversity in live streaming. When you go to the top end of live streaming, by live streaming we're talking about shoppertainment, if you like. You're talking about influencers speaking to camera, demonstrating products, often in participation with brands, and then making sales direct from that live stream. So people clicking on the product they're demonstrating, putting it in their basket and buying it. That's what I mean by live streaming. If you go to the top end of that, a guy like Li Jiaqi, the lipstick brother.
Lipstick King, yeah.
Lipstick King. He, in one day of pre-sales, made, I think it was 1.9 billion with a B dollars for brands.
That's not bad for a day's work.
So this is, it's a remarkable number, right? And you have to kind of pinch yourself that he, in one day of pre-sales for this year's Double 11, probably made more for brands than brands made in, I don't know, probably if you go back to 2013, in the entire event, right? So it's an extraordinary transformation that's taken place. If you look at that, that speaks to changing shopping habits. It speaks to innovation in how we shop, because people are no longer just going to e-commerce platforms, particularly not to ours, and expecting a really static experience. They're expecting video. They're expecting an interactive experience. They're expecting to see somebody talk to them, and they're expecting to be able to ask questions and get answers. And they're not expecting to say, well, that's a great product. I'm now going to go to my other e-commerce app and shop there. They're expecting to be able to buy immediately. And they do that via Taobao Live. So that is one, I would say, really big innovation that has exploded over the last couple of years, and this year is going to be even more important. The second I would think about is this sense of almost living in the app. So using avatars to enjoy the app, to create gamified experiences. And so if live streaming is Taobao Live, we have something called Taobao Life. Taobao Life is where you or I could create avatars that look just like us.
That's a scary prospect.
I think they do very well, and they could probably do an interview like this in Taobao Life. And they can go around and find products. They can spend virtual coin on products and experiences. They can, if they want to buy a suit on Double 11, they can go and get their avatar to try on that suit or the outfit you're wearing. And they can then say, what does it look on me? Do I feel happy with it? If so, I'm going to go and click and buy. Within that kind of more vivid and vibrant online experience, which goes way beyond traditional shopping, we can also then gamify that experience. And so we can say, well, hey, if you go and shop with this brand and make these kinds of shopping decisions, we can give you something as basic as vouchers, but then coming back to the start of our conversation, we can help you to make greener decisions. We can help you to take those points and plant trees using Alipay. Or if you share your purchases socially, we'll give you 1 RMB for every time you share a purchase. And if you share, I mean socially, and if you're sharing lots and lots of purchases, those RMB stack up, right? And we're going to give that money to charitable causes, to the underprivileged, to rural communities, perhaps to seniors who live alone in China. So there's a lot we can do to gamify experiences, to make your online shopping experience more vivid and vibrant. And from that, I think to drive value, which comes back to inclusion and comes back to sustainability.
But of course, that puts a large onus on brands, in a sense, to create the content that can live on that platform well.
I think so, yeah. I think, as a brand, you have, if you're trying to get your share of attention and therefore eventually get your share of that GMV, you have to think, well, why am I relevant? Right? Why have I got something to say to this consumer? Part of it, yes, is going to be how great your product is, but it's also going to be how you talk to them. And it's also going to be how you listen to them. So as a brand, yes, you do have, I think, to invest in great experiences, not just try and put your products in front of people and hope they buy.
Well, David Lloyd, there I'm afraid we have to end it. It's been a delight to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. David Lloyd, the Alibaba country manager for all the rainy countries in Europe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks very much, David.